that we may continue to rise with conviction in every step of our journey. Bigyan mo po kami ng lakas ng loob sa mga sandaling kailangan naming protektahan ang karapatan ng bawat mamamayan, lalo na ang mga kapuspalad at pinagkaitan ng tadhana. It is our prayer, Lord, that as we embrace our duties and responsibilities as legislators, may we always remember that we are your servants and the people's servants, so that every work that we do may give glory to you and our country. Amen.
Are you sure? I think there are 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Secretary will now call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Sangara Aquino Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S, Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago Ejercito, Enrile Escudero Estrada Gingona Honasan, Lapid Legarda Marcos Usmeña Pimentel Po Recto Revilla Soto Trillanes Villar. Senate President Drilon.
14 senators are present. The Chair declares the presence of a quorum. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 16th Session, September 1, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, the reading of the Journal of Session number 16 is dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letters from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 25 August 2015, it adopted Senate number 2834 as an amendment to House number 4397, entitled An Act Providing for the Modernization of the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, PAGASA, and appropriating funds therefore, and Senate number 2762 as an amendment to House number 5822, entitled An Act Preventing the Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction by Regulating the Provision of Technical Assistance, Brokering, Financing, and Transporting Services in relation to the management of trade in strategic goods.
To the archives.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 26 August 2015, it adopted Senate number 2482 as an amendment to House number 5535, entitled An Act Modernizing the Practice of Naval Architecture in the Philippines and repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 4565, RA number 4565, otherwise known as the Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering Law.
To the archives.
Bill on first reading, Senate number 2921, an act authorizing the Social Security Commission to condone penalties on delinquent contributions and to determine the monthly salary credits, the schedule and rate of contributions, and the rate of penalty on delinquent contributions and unpaid loan amortizations, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 1161 amended, otherwise known as the Social Security Law, by Senator Escudero.
Government corporations and public enterprises. Labor, Employment, Human Resources Development.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 1551, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation in the Commission on Audit report that the outstanding balance of cash advances of retired, separated, or deceased personnel of the Philippine National Police remain unliquidated as of the end of 2014. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public order and dangerous drugs.
Yes, Resolution number 1552, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the 2014 Commission on Audit report that the Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission has failed its mandate to restore the Pasig River's water quality in the past 6 years. Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and Natural Resources.
PSR number 1553, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation in the Commission Audit report that the Kedan and Rural Credit Guarantee Corporation continues to incur losses from its operations amounting to 11.5 billion 2014. Defensor Santiago.
Agriculture and Food.
Yes, Resolution number 1554, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Commission Audit report that the Board of Claims under the Department of Justice failed to return more than 136 million pesos from the accumulated victims Compensation Fund to the National Treasury in 2014.
Human
by
Right,
Secretary
Justice and
Secretary.
Human Rights.
PSR number 1555, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation and the Commission on Audit report that some 460 million pesos in fund transfer made by the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development remain outstanding or unliquidated as of the end of
Science and
2014.
Technology.
PSR number 1556, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Commission on Audit report that combat clothing, equipment, and ammunition remain undelivered to the Philippine Army by the end of 2014, thereby depriving them of the timely use thereof.
Committee on National Defense and Security.
Committee reports. Committee report number 214, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Foreign Relations, and Finance on Senate number 2922 with Santos Gingona III, Trillanes IV, Ejercito Estrada, and Paolo Benigno Bamaquino IV as authors thereof, entitled an act creating the Philippine Trade Representative Office and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 1084, 1149, 1404, taking into
To the
consideration
calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 215, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food, Ways and Means, and Justice and Human Rights on Senate number 2923 with Senators Joseph Victor Ejercito and Cynthia Villar, authors thereof, entitled an act declaring large-scale agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, prescribing the penalties to foreign further
To the
purposes.
calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 216, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation and Finance on Senate number 2924 with Senators Trillanes IV, Cynthia Villar, Ligada as authors thereof, entitled an act regulating the registration, licensure, and practice of occupational therapy, providing funds therefore and
To the
other related
calendar for
purposes.
ordinary business.
Committee report number 217, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, Finance, and Senate number 2925, with Senators Ejercito Estrada, Trillanes IV, and Ligares, authors thereof, entitled Act regulating the practice of speech, language pathology in the Philippines, providing funds for and further
To
purposes.
the calendar for ordinary business. The Majority Leader. With the permission of the Chamber, on our agenda today are a number of measures. May I request, may the Chair request, that we give priority to the interpellation on Senate Bill number 2894. This is the Bangsamoro Bill, as we see the sponsor available and the one scheduled to avail of the period of interpellation, Senator Gingona, is available. So may the Chair request that we give this priority.
We suspend for 1 minute, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, before we recognize the Chairman of Local Government, Senator Marcos, for the interpellation, may we just greet our colleague, Senator Grace Poe, who is celebrating her birthday tomorrow, September 3, 2015.
Senator Grace Poe, happy birthday. Advance, happy birthday.
If we may suspend session for 1 minute to
1 minute
allow our
suspend.
members to greet our colleague, Mr. President.
Session suspended for 1 minute.
Oo nga. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, we have some guests that if we may recognize them briefly. We have Congressman Henry Waminal of Misamis Occidental. We have the Bachelor of Science in Social Work students of Universidad de Manila. We have members of the Gender and Development Council of Tabaco City, Albay, led by Councilor Lourdes Berces. We have guests of Senator Legarda from the NCIP, or the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, Director Kilaman, Engineer Buasen, Attorney Magtangeng, Attorney Buenaobra, Rene Magnaye, Mr. Dingal, and the guests of Senator Pia Cayetano from Ars Progetti, Engineer Dina Diala, Engineer Viola Fanchulachi, Architect Patricia Baruco, and from the World Bank, Ms. Leslie Cordero, from UST, Professor Eric Cerudo, and from DOST, Ms. Carmina Garcia. I move further recognition, Mr. President.
The presence of our guest is made of record.
Mr. President, Mr. President, just a quick manifestation. The guests we have here are technical people that we have invited after our Bohol earthquake and Yolanda typhoon. Many of our historical and heritage sites were destroyed, and thus DOT found it urgent that we look into how we will address these issues. And thus, with the World Bank and UST, they have now brought in these experts to help us assess the situation. So we welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President, because they will be doing a great service to us with the assessments they will be doing and the learning that they will be able to gather from this assessment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, we also have with us the Save Our Schools Network.
The Save Our Schools Network.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2894 under Committee Report 200. This is the bill on the basic law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is we are now in the period of interpellations. I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Marcos.
Senator Marcos is recognized as the principal sponsor.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator T.G. Gingona to interpellate on the measure.
For the period of interpellation, Senator Gingona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the approach that I took in my review of the draft of the BBL takes off from the following objectives. First, to highlight the primacy of the Constitution as basis and framework for the mandate of government in peace negotiations and in creation of the autonomous regions. Second, to acknowledge the nature, context, and significance of the draft BBL, both as a legislative measure and a peace process instrument. And third, to reiterate the need to maintain constitutionality, consistency with the objectives of the signed agreement and the peace process, and clarity in the language. And fourth, to reflect lessons learned from experience in the history of the peace process. With the indulgence of the good sponsor, may I ask a few questions?
Certainly, Mr. President. For the gentleman of Bukidnon, I yield.
Yes. Mr. President, Senate Bill 2408, like RA 9054, or the Arm Law, contained a preamble. Simply defined, a preamble is an introductory statement of either a constitution or a statute that usually states the reasons for and the intent of the law. In the substitute bill, it was deleted, Mr. President. May we know the reason why it was deleted? Because we'd also like to know if there is anything that would be contrary to the Constitution in having a preamble in the proposed BBL.
Before the sponsor answers, may I request our colleagues to please take their seats because it's very difficult for the chair to listen to the interpellation. We have, can we request Senator Ligarda, Senator Binay, and Senator Villar? Because it's very difficult for the chair to listen to the interpellation because of the conversations going on the floor. Thank you. Yes, Senator Marcos.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as we all well know, one of the concerns, not only of legislators, the congressmen, the senators, but also of the general public in the entire process of crafting the basic law for Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, has been that it might be a step towards separation, towards the secession of a large part of Mindanao from the Republic of the Philippines. And one of the reasons that is so is that the draft BBL was written in the form of a constitution with a preamble, and again it was the form that it was as it was given to us, it looked like a constitution. And that's why I felt that since the preamble is, since it is a statute, the preamble is not necessary, and we took that away and we changed the form. And it is now sequentially numbered, and that makes it very different from what a constitution would look like. And this is just another one of those little efforts that we have made, those little moves and changes that we have made precisely to assure everybody that this is not a constitution for a separate sovereign state, nor will it be used as the creation of an entity that will eventually have the possibility of separating from the Republic of the Philippines. So it was a political gesture, I admit, but again, it is consistent with legal practice in that statutes generally do not have a preamble. And so but in any case, a great deal of the language that was found in the preamble can be found in the body of the proposed law. So we did not lose anything in terms of explaining the principles and concepts behind the basic law. However, again, it is just again a change, and a change that was decided upon precisely to assure our people and the legislators and all those who are involved in this process that this is not a constitution. We are not creating a new state that will eventually separate from the Republic of the Philippines.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you for that. But, you know, Mr. President, a preamble is defined as an introductory statement that states the reasons for the law and the intent. It is not confined to the Constitution. It can also be found in statutes. And its predecessor, Republic Act 9054, does have a preamble, and it has not been found to be repugnant to the Constitution. I guess really, Mr. President, that is the strongest reason that it is not repugnant to the Constitution to have a preamble within a statute. Secondly, you stated that nothing is lost by not having a preamble. On the converse, Mr. President, nothing is also lost if you have a preamble. And we must remember that this is not a legal, technical document. This is a political document that embodies some cultural concepts. And I think it would be best, for the sake of clarity, to start with a statement for the reasons and intent of a law. Mr. President.
Mr. President, it may not be constitutionally repugnant to have a preamble, but that is not the reason why the preamble was removed. It was not for constitutional, to satisfy any constitutional, to remedy any constitutional infirmity in having a preamble. As I had earlier stated, the reason was that it was to provide assurance to all those who had expressed misgivings about the entire process of writing a basic law, of creating a further autonomous region, which had a great deal more autonomy and had a very different structure from ARM. And again, I think it came out in the hearings that it was one of the reasons that these concerns were raised was that because the structure of the Bangsamoro government as originally proposed is exactly the same as any federated state of Malaysia. And in fact, the suspicion was said they have already created a federated state precisely for as in Malaysia, and maybe they intend to move it and separate from the Republic, and they will fit right in as another federated state of Malaysia. Of course, I do not think that that is the case, but again, it is a concern that was raised, and I think by making it very, very clear that this is not a state within a state that we are creating, this is not a constitution that we are creating, and with the form that we have chosen to use, I think that point has been very clearly made, thus assuaging what fears others may have toward about the future of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region and the integrity of the Republic of the Philippines. And I of course defer to the legal opinion of my colleague from Bukidnon, but I cannot understand how I understand that it is a political document, but it is certainly, since it is a law, it is primarily a legal document, perhaps a legal document to enforce or to implement the political action of signing a peace agreement with rebel force. So. We have to precisely that the reason that the preamble was removed was a political one, and it is one for us to be able to garner greater support for the passage of the substitute bill, where there are many assurances that the creation of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region is not a step that will move us in the direction of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region separating from the Philippines and perhaps joining Malaysia. This is the fear that was raised during the hearings, and this is what we had tried to address.
Yes, Mr. President. That what you said about that it is akin to something like Malaysia is a perception, Mr. President.
Actually, Mr. President, it is more than a perception. If we look at the organization of the Federated States of Malaysia, it is exactly the same as the Federated States of Malaysia, with a parliament, with a chief minister, with an executive and a legislature, with a wali. All of these things are exactly the same as the Federated States of Malaysia. But be that as it may, again, it is an understandable concern, and it is something that we felt we needed to address.
If that would be the case, Mr. President, we are now working with the committee report, which has substantially altered the original bill.
That is right. And
that's correct.
And those are the reasons for this particular alteration, Mr. President.
Therefore, Mr. President, maybe Mr. President, would the sponsor be objecting to a preamble because of its wording in the bill, or he is objecting to the concept of having a preamble, no matter what the wording is, so that we can decouple the issues here?
As I have earlier said, many of the languages, the explanations, of the principles and concepts behind the writing of the basic law finds it from the preamble, finds itself also in the body of the substitute bill. So that's the reason, and the reason that we did it was not because that will clearly indicate that the language is not something that we found to be unacceptable or objectionable, but it was the form. Again, I wanted to remove every vestige of a constitutional form from the Bangsamoro Basic Law, precisely for the reasons that I had earlier stated.
So then, Mr. President, the distinguished sponsor does not even agree to the concept of a preamble in the Bangsamoro Basic Law.
No. Well, it's not for me to agree or disagree.
I was asking because
the Bangsamoro Basic Law has a preamble, and
I mean the committee report. If an amendment were made in the committee report, putting in a preamble, would you object?
Yes, Mr. President, I would, because that would defeat the precise purpose of why we did it, which again is to assure all observers, not only officialdom, but also the general citizenry, that we are not creating and separating a state from the republic.
Okay, Mr. President, since it is clear that you are not in consonance with having a preamble, no matter what the wording would be in the Bangsamoro Basic Law, I'd just like to point out several things. First of all, as stated before, a preamble is a statement of the reasons for the law and the intent of the law. And the distinguished sponsor has agreed that it is not repugnant to the Constitution to have a preamble in a law. Secondly, we already had a preamble in the Arm Law. 9054 does have a preamble, and that was not found to be constitutionally repugnant, nor did the legislature at that time, they did see it fit that a preamble would be placed there. Lastly, we must remember the distinguished sponsor mentioned that this is a statute. It's not a constitution, and this is a statute. I would like to point out that this is not a statute, this is an organic act. And in many respects, it is unlike any ordinary statute. In this sense, we also know that the organic acts for autonomous region also requires the approval of the people in a plebiscite. And that's what our Constitution provides. And the Constitution itself recognizes that autonomous regions are sui generis. Let me quote Article 10, Section 1 of the Constitution, which states, and I quote, "The territorial and political subdivisions of the Republic of the Philippines are, number one, provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangay." So to say that an autonomous region is a political subdivision is not accurate, because there are only 4 categories of territorial political subdivisions in the Constitution: province, city, municipality, and barangay. Period. The next sentence says, "There shall be autonomous regions in Muslim Mindanao and the Cordilleras as hereinafter provided." This indicates, Mr. President, that autonomous regions are different and that they are not subject to statute, they are subject to organic laws, which have to be ratified by the people in its plebiscite. And therefore, Mr. President, I would like to, at the proper time in the future, I would like to move for the re-inclusion of a preamble in the final form of the committee report when we vote on it, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'm not sure I understand because the autonomous region still has a juridical personality, and therefore is a political. Therefore, that makes it a political subdivision. Perhaps it is as the gentleman has pointed out. They are different from all the other local government political subdivisions, the cities, provinces, towns, and municipalities and barangays. But this we understand terribly well, simply because it is clear that a great deal more autonomy has been granted to the autonomous regions, especially the powers as stated in the Constitution. But once again, to return to the point that he had earlier made, the reason the preamble was removed was not to remedy any kind of constitutional infirmity. It is precisely to assure everyone that this is not a constitution for a sovereign state. This is a law that creates an autonomous region and defines the powers that the government of that autonomous region will have, as opposed to the powers that the national government wields. So, again, that was the sole purpose. The constitutionality did not come into it. It did not really come into the reasoning that led to the removal of the preamble. If you will notice, Mr. President, beyond the removal of the preamble, we have also made the numbering of the sections sequential, and that again was partially to ease our work. It was easier to find the different sections and the different provisions. But more to the point, it was also done to remove any suspicion or any fear that we are writing a constitution for a separate state.
Yes, Mr. President. I'm not in disagreement that we are not writing a constitution, but I would like to point out that we are not writing an ordinary statute. And I would like to state again that in Article 10, Section 1, there are only 4 kinds of territorial, political subdivisions. Autonomous region is sui generis. It is governed by an organic act. Well, let me finish, Mr. President. Under Article 10, Section 20, it says, within its territorial jurisdiction and subject to the provisions of the Constitution and national laws, the organic act of the autonomous regions shall provide for legislative powers over, and it makes an enumeration. The point being, even the Constitution itself states that the law governing the autonomous region shall be called organic act. And therefore, it is proper and fitting for a preamble, Mr. President. And again, there has already been a precedent, Mr. President. The 9054 does have a preamble.
Mr. President, allow me to point out that it is precisely these assertions that this is not a political subdivision of the Republic of the Philippines which feeds these fears that if it is not a political subdivision of the Republic of the Philippines, then what is it? Is it a separate state? Is it a sub-state? Is it a state within a state? That is exactly the question that was raised, and that is what feeds that suspicion that this is the beginning of a secession or a separatism, or that of a separation from the Republic of the Philippines. Then that is precisely why, again, to come back to the point, we have tried to assuage, again, as I said, those fears. Now, as to its being sui generis, there are many other. The Cordillera Autonomous Region. There was an attempt to organize that, but that doesn't happen. Again, in other countries, the United Kingdom comes to mind. Spain also comes to mind. Canada comes to mind, where we have such autonomous regions, and so we can follow their example, but in each of those cases that I have cited, they are still considered a organic part of the political structure of those unions, of those countries. And again, I would be at a loss then how to define or how to describe or what to call the autonomous regions if it is not a political subdivision of part of the Republic. that would immediately remove it from the national government, and that is exactly what we are trying to avoid.
Again, Mr. President, the basis of my saying so is that they are autonomous regions. That's what you call them. They are not territorial political subdivisions, but they are autonomous regions as stated in the Constitution. And I wouldn't have said so had they not been stated in the Constitution. And the law that would govern them, Mr. President, is called an organic act, as stated in the Constitution.
Furthermore, Mr. President, the preamble is an expression of the will of the people, as I understand it. The will of the people has not yet been determined, and that will be determined by the plebiscite, precisely the purpose of having that plebiscite. And therefore, perhaps we can wait for the will of the people to be expressed properly before we take upon ourselves to be able to express that will without having any background or any data or any result of any plebiscite that will indicate what that will of the people is. But again, if it is not a political, again, to go back to the point of political subdivision, then I would ask the gentleman from Bukidnon, if it is not a political subdivision of the Philippines, what is it?
It is an autonomous region recognized under Article 10 of the Constitution
Very
of the
well,
Republic
Mr.
of the
President. If
Philippines.
that is the case, is it still part of the national government? or is
Most
it separate?
definitely, Mr. President, most definitely.
Very well. You see, these are the problems that arise when we insist upon using the form of a constitution and to make assertions that they are separate somehow from the Philippines, and to say that they are different from all other local government units. Although it may be true, it still is, in fact, a local government unit. Perhaps it is a different sort of local government unit than what we normally refer to, but nevertheless, we must be clear when we state that it is still. Again, this oil comes back to the fear and the suspicion that this will be this might be a first step. The creation of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region will be a first step of separating part of Mindanao from the Philippines.
Mr. President, precisely, I think it would be helpful to have a preamble because it would prevent confusion, because a preamble is a statement of intent. And if you're saying that there are fears that it might not be part of the Philippines, it might be a first step, then let's state that it is not so in the preamble, Mr. President, so that we can explain the nature of the Bangsamoro, that it is not a separate state, that it is an autonomous region recognized within the bounds of the Constitution, explicitly recognized and mandated by the Constitution to be established, Mr. President.
To go back to the point...
The gentleman on the floor, I think the matter has been sufficiently discussed. I think our colleagues fully understand both sides. And at a certain stage, at a certain point, the gentleman from Bukidnon can propose an amendment, which is to reinstate the preamble, and the sponsor, Senator Marcos, can state his view. And at the end of the day, we'll have to vote for it, on it. So unless there are other matters which the gentleman would want to spread into the record, may I suggest, only a suggestion, that we go to the next topic.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm in full agreement.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There are no other issues that you have to... okay, the gentleman will tackle other issues. Senator Gingon.
Yes, Mr. President. The next issue I would like to tackle is the matter of which we took up the last time, the matter of internal waters, inland waters. I do remember, Mr. President, that I stated, and I'll state again, no, for reasons of clarity, that inland waters have already been given jurisdiction over to the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao under RA 9054. Article 3, Section 8, which states that subject to the provisions of the Constitution and this Organic Act, the regional government shall have authority, power, and right to explore, develop, and utilize the natural resources, including surface and subsurface rights, inland and coastal waters, Mr. President. This has been taken away. And also, I'd like to point out that under Article 10, Section 20 of the Constitution, it states, within its territorial jurisdiction and subject to the provisions of this Constitution and national laws, the Organic Act of the Autonomous Region shall provide for legislative powers over natural resources. And definitely inland water is part of a natural resource. Mr. President, I do remember that in the last interpellation that I had, the distinguished sponsor stated that they took it away from ARM, and I pointed it out that it was already there in ARM, and they took it away, and they said that ARM was a failed experiment. That's why they took it away. And my question then would be, if ARM is a failed experiment, and here we are trying to establish an autonomous region, don't you think, Mr. President, if something that is a failed experiment and we establish something new, we should enhance its powers rather than diminish its powers and jurisdiction? Because if the origin was a failed experiment and you remove its powers and jurisdiction, are you not making it a surety that it will be doomed to failure by doing so, Mr. President? Don't you think we should enhance the autonomous region rather than diminish the powers of an autonomous region, subject to the conditions that they are not repugnant to the Constitution and to the national laws of this land?
Well, first of all, I would like to quote back Section 20 of Article 10 of the Constitution, and it says, within its territories and subject to the provisions of this Constitution and national laws. And I bring it up again simply because I come at this situation or this problem from a different direction. We are not taking anything away from anyone. We are making sure that the local government code is enforced, and that none of the powers and privileges that RA 7160 provides for to local governments are diminished in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, we maintain that those are the powers that will continue to be accorded or provided to the local government units, and that is the control over municipal waters as it is defined in the local government code. Once again, should the Bangsamoro Parliament, once the members are elected and it is formed, can then enact laws, which again, can enact laws for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, which will be applicable on all the inland waters, consistent with the mandate as it is in the Constitution, as it has been quoted. So, I do not see I do not see this as taking away anything from any entity. I merely see it as being very clear in preserving the powers, the privileges, the functions of the local government units as specified in the local government code. Now, what the Bangsamoro Parliament will choose to do over and above that is really up to the Bangsamoro Parliament is free to do, and they can enact those laws that are not in that are consistent with the Constitution and national laws. And again, that one national law, which is particularly relevant in this case, is the local government code. And again, what I had hoped to do, and I think we have been able to manage it, is to preserve, not to take away anything, is to preserve what already is provided for to the local governments in the local government code. Whatever else that the Bangsamoro Parliament would choose to pass as a law to enhance that or to coordinate or to help in the administration and management of inland waters, then certainly the Bangsamoro Parliament will be free to do that and has the power to do that.
Question, Senator Marcos.
Yes, sir.
Can the Bangsamoro Parliament reduce the powers of the local government over inland waters?
Not without amending the local government code, Mr. President.
Therefore, the answer is no,
No, Mr. President.
just for the record. Senator Gingor.
Yes, Mr. President. That would precisely be one of the points that I would like to raise, that if we leave it to the Bangsamoro Parliament, they are then subject to the limitations established by national law. They cannot transgress national laws. And therefore, I think we should already give them the jurisdiction over the preservation and management of inland waters, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, this point has been belabored, and I don't see my distinguished colleague yielding to my point of view. So therefore, at the proper time, I will just have to introduce an amendment and subject it to a vote. I would just like to point out that there are two important inland lakes that are inland waters that are closely historically and culturally tied up with the Bangsamoro. One would be Lake Lanao, and the other, which is Liguasan Marsh, 200 hectares of marshland, which is rumored to be rich in resources. And it would be a tragedy. It would be a tragedy, Mr. President, if the Bangsamoro people were deprived of the opportunity to participate in the bounties of the natural resources within their inland waters.
Well, Mr. President, I would just like to point out once again that the inhabitants around the Liguasan Marsh and Lake Lanao continue to be the same inhabitants that they had always been. We are not taking Lake Lanao and removing it from the Bangsamoro region and bringing it to the Visayas. We are not taking the Liguasan Marsh away from the Bangsamoro region and taking it to Luzon. It remains there to be enjoyed and to be exploited, and the resources to be exploited by the same people who have been inhabitants around both natural features for many hundreds of years, and nothing will change in that regard. Again, if the Bangsamoro government now chooses or decides that they feel that the Bangsamoro government, over and above the local government units that represent the inhabitants of the different local government units, over and above that, that they feel that a share or of the administration or part of its management should be undertaken by the Bangsamoro government, then certainly they have the power to pass a law and to make that so. So I honestly do not see the conflict in the ethnic connection, the connection to the ethnic groups to those bodies of water. And as I said, it will not go anywhere. It is still there. It is still the same people who will be enjoying the benefits of those features, and it does not remove anything from anyone. If the Bangsamoro government chooses to take a share or of that responsibility, then they would certainly be welcome to do so.
With the permission of Senator Gingona, can the good sponsor elaborate a bit more, because that last answer seems to be in conflict with the previous answer that to the question that the chair proposed, and that is, can the Bangsamoro Parliament reduce or interfere with the powers of the local government under the local government code? But your second answer appears to be in conflict with that previous answer. So, just for clarification, can you spread it to the record?
The management and administration of municipal waters, as laid out in the local government code, are not total, Mr. President. And therefore, there remain a multitude of other functions that the Bangsamoro government, over and above those functions exercised by the local government code. Should they choose to do that, as I said, then they can certainly pass a law and do precisely that.
Can the gentleman give some specific examples?
I will have to go back and look at the details precisely on the administration on that. I will come back to the chair to specify what exactly the local government code says and what are the options for possible legislation by the Bangsamoro Parliament.
Senator Gingoa, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as stated, Mr. President, it seems that we will not come into an agreement here. At some point in time, I will introduce an amendment and subject it to a vote. I'd just like to end this by saying that nandun na yan sa 9054, binigay na natin. Ngayon, gagawa tayo ng bagong batas para palakasin ang autonomous region, pero imbis na pinapalakas, tinatanggal natin. Talagang hindi magtatagumpay.
Mr. President, I would like to bring the gentleman's attention to Section 8, page 3 of the substitute bill, where Section 8 is the definition of the geographical area of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. The geographical area refers to the landmass as well as the waters over which the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region has jurisdiction. We are not taking anything away from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. The area of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region shall remain a part of the Philippines. That is, I believe, clear enough. The entire area is under their jurisdiction. But again, we seek to preserve the functions of the local government units. We are not taking anything away from any entity. What we were trying to do is to preserve what the local government code provides to local government units. Anything over and above that is beyond the scope of that description.
Then you would not be you would be in agreement then to put in provisions that would clarify then, Mr. President.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that is my hope, that with the process that we are undergoing, interpolation and the proposal of amendments, that we will clarify and make very clear to everyone what exactly it is that we are proposing, what exactly it is that we are intending to do.
So,
as a matter of fact, Mr. President, a great deal of the work that was done in writing the substitute bill was not to change any principles or concepts, but to clarify simply many of the descriptions that were made in terms of functions, in terms of government bodies, in terms of power sharing. All of these things have not changed radically, but simply we have clarified it and made it consistent with the Constitution and made it consistent with national law.
So to clarify, Mr. President, you are stating that it has not been taken away from the autonomous regional
Well, certainly not.
autonomous-
How it would be physically impossible to remove a lake from
No, I mean
from any place.
the legal jurisdiction.
The
I'm not talking
jurisdiction
about-
is they have jurisdiction of the entire Bangsamoro autonomous region. We simply seek
including inland waters.
we
Mr.
simply seek to yes, that is exactly what Section 8 says.
So you are in agreement, Mr. President. I just wanted just categorical.
The change that we have made is to remove it from the exclusive powers of the Bangsamoro, precisely because it is an implied amendment of the local government code.
So
You're
amenable to
We did not return it to the power to the national government. We kept it within. We continued to keep it within the concurrent powers of, in this case, the local governments and of the Bangsamoro region.
So it seems we're making some progress here, Mr. President. Then you'd be agreeable to some clarificatory provisions which we could discuss at some future time, Mr. President.
Mr. President, anything that clarifies this rather complex and sometimes confusing document would certainly be welcome.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. May I move to the next point, Mr.
Please
President?
proceed, Senator Gingon.
Okay. Sharia High Court, Mr. President. The Sharia High Court. Okay. The provision was deleted in the substitute Senate bill. From my review, I do not see anything unconstitutional in retaining the Sharia High Court, Mr. President. Let me just read the pertinent provisions of the Constitution. Article 8, Section 1 of the Constitution states that judicial power shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such lower courts as may be established by law. And of course, by law means laws passed by the National Congress. And in Article 10, Section 18, it says that the Organic Act shall likewise provide for special courts with personal, family, and property law. Jurisdiction consistent with the provisions of the Constitution and national laws. Further, RA 9054, or the ARM law, mandated the creation of a Sharia Appellate Court, which is similar to the proposed Bangsamoro Sharia High Court. Would the good sponsor let us know why those sections were deleted?
That was, Mr. President, that was an attempt to streamline the system, because upon study of our experience with the Sharia justice system in ARM, there was very little, there were very few cases. And this could be handled by the lower courts, and it seemed that it was not necessary to put in higher court with its 9 justices, because again there was the lower courts, the lower Sharia courts were perfectly able to handle the caseload. So it is just a streamlining. Even you could even refer to it as a cost-cutting measure, in a sense. But in any case, that's the reason that we removed the High Court.
Okay, so that's clear, Mr. President. Then it's not a legal.
No,
there's no legal reason.
No, it is not.
For purposes of practicality.
Yes,
and
it wasn't. It wasn't. There wasn't any principle that we felt that we were trying to impose. It was simply looking at the history of the Sharia courts and how much work it is that they had to do. It seemed that in 2000 the total caseload for 2007, for example, was 602 cases divided amongst 33 judges. In contrast, Metropolitan Trial Courts, whose 66 judges are less than 10% of the 799 RTC judges have to handle a caseload that is close to 40% of the caseload of its RTC counterpart. So you can see that as compared to RTCs, this is a very light caseload.
So in that case, Mr. President, since you have removed the Bangsamoro Sharia High Court, decisions of the Sharia District Court and the Sharia Circuit Courts shall be appealed to
The Court of Appeals, Mr. President.
the Court of Appeals. Okay. And the Supreme Court in cases that are appropriate, Mr. President.
That would be the procedure, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President. Although I reserve
Just
my...
a question, Senator Gigona, with your permission.
Yes.
If there is a need to create more Sharia courts in the future, who would have the authority to create these Sharia courts?
The creation of new courts.
Just a moment, Senator Marcos.
Oh,
Yes, the minority leader is
question of quorum.
recognized. Okay, there's a roll call vote. Can we ask our colleagues to come to the floor and answer the roll? In the meantime, can we have a 1-minute suspension just to allow our colleagues? Yes.
Bell.
Yes, can we have the bell?
Governor. Korean. Yun lang, they're Korean in spelling. That should be okay. And then when it's ready, you tell me. Tawagan ko na rin. I should explain it na nga.
The session is resumed. The minority leader has called for a quorum call, has called for a roll call. The secretary is directed to call the roll to establish a quorum.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Honasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
There are 13 senators present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The gentlemen on the floor, Senator Marcos and Senator Gingona, are once more recognized on the period of interpellation on the Bangsamoro Basic Law.
Thank you, Mr. President. To answer the question from the chair as to the creation of additional Sharia courts, Section 93 of the substitute bill states, upon the recommendation of the Bangsamoro Regional Government, Congress may create additional Sharia courts in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region and apportion the jurisdiction of each of the Sharia courts and district courts. That would be the mechanism, Mr.
So
President.
it is the Congress who can create additional Sharia courts upon the recommendation of the Bangsamoro Parliament.
Precisely so, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Marcos.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Senator Gingon.
am I recognized? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, on the matter of the Sharia courts, the point of the distinguished sponsor is well taken for streamlining. But, Mr. President, there is another point that should be taken in account, and that Sharia courts have a special jurisdiction. It's not just about the ability to handle a caseload, but to deal with the substance of the Sharia. The closest that I could see as an analogy would be Court of Tax Appeals, because taxation being a complex matter, Congress saw it fit to create a Court of Tax Appeals when we could have done without the Court of Tax Appeals, with the Court of Appeals. But we did see it fit to create Court of Tax Appeals specifically because of the complexities of the subject matter. Now we're faced with the matter of the Sharia, and I can see that justices of the Court of Appeals would be taken to task to be able to rule on Sharia cases on appeal to them because of the complexity. It's not just complex in terms of technical, but there are cultural and religious aspects to this matter which the Court of Appeals justice may not be predisposed to handle, Mr. President. And therefore, I would like to ask the distinguished sponsor to take a look at that point.
Certainly. We are trying to, we actually conducted a study as to the nature of the cases in the Sharia courts in ARM. In ARM there was an appellate court, and we are trying to determine if the cases, how many cases were brought up to that appellate court, and again the nature of those cases, if they require a special training or special knowledge in Sharia law. Yes, we will look into that and we will provide the gentleman with that information.
My last point on the Sharia court, Mr. President, is that even in the original bill of the BBL, it states that the Sharia courts shall have appellate jurisdiction, shall have jurisdiction over courts in the Bangsamoro. I would like to point out, Mr. President, that PD 1083 that created the Sharia courts, because of PD 1083, we have Sharia courts outside the Bangsamoro. In fact, we have Sharia courts in the Kidapawan City, Zamboanga City, Cebu City, and therefore clearly these courts are outside the Bangsamoro. And so if we are to bring back the provision of the Sharia high courts, then we should give them jurisdiction of Sharia courts, over Sharia courts, not only within the Bangsamoro, but all over the country. Mr. President.
Should there be the creation of an appellate court or a high court, a Sharia high court, then that could certainly be included. But again, the question as to whether or not there's a need for that high court is something that we can study further, and we will determine that, make that determination as to whether or not it could be found to be necessary.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next point, Mr. President, is the Special Development Fund. I understand it was deleted, Mr. President. May we know the reason why?
Again, it is a streamlining. Simplification in the structure of the government. Why have a special development fund? You have all kinds of funds already going in. Should there be any fund that is necessary, we can add it on to the other funds that are being given to the Bangsamoro government. And can you see the original? And it's simply because there was no need for it. We did not see the need for it. There are yeah, section. Yes. In the original draft bill, there was a special development fund for the development purposes upon ratification of Bangsamoro Basic Law. So all the funds that are being given to the Bangsamoro by the national government, all the funds that are being collected by the Bangsamoro government are presumably for the operations of the government and furthermore for the development of the Bangsamoro region. There does not seem to be any particular reason for having a special development fund. Besides, the amount that is put aside for that fund is not minor. The amount equivalent to 7 billion pesos shall be allocated for the first year following the ratification of this law. Beginning the second year, the development fund shall be in the amount of 10 billion, which shall be paid out to the Bangsamoro over 5 years at the rate of 2 billion pesos per year. So we have no great I have no great objections to that fund, but there is no stated purpose for the existence of the fund. The administration of that fund is also not clear. There is a very, again, I do not see the need. If there needs to be additional funds for development, then the national government can allocate such funds and say that this is required for the accelerated development of the Bangsamoro region. Again, I could not see the need to establish a separate fund, for the funds of which are to be used for the same purpose as all the other monies that are being given and being collected by the Bangsamoro government.
Mr. President, the reasons given are not, I noticed, are not legal reasons. Well taken, well taken. My only response to that would be that we all know that the area, which is now the area with the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, is one of the poorest regions in the country, one of the poorest. And here we are creating a new entity, and we want it to succeed. So if we are to give them political autonomy, we must also give them the financial and economic wherewithal so that they can succeed. For after all, Mr. President, their success will be our success and the success of the country as a whole. So, Mr. President, would you have any objections to returning it and adding provisions so that we can have transparency and accountability in the utilization of such special development fund?
Let me read the entirety of the section that creates the Special Development Fund. The central government shall provide for a special development fund to the Bangsamoro for rehabilitation and development purposes upon the ratification of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. The amount equivalent to 7 billion pesos shall be allocated for the first year following the ratification of this basic law. Beginning the second year, the Special Development Fund shall be in the amount of 10 billion pesos, which shall be paid out to the Bangsamoro government over 5 years at the rate of 2 billion pesos per year. Such amount shall be regularly released at the beginning of each fiscal year to the Bangsamoro government. I do not see the stated purpose of the Special Development Fund. And there has not been, at least in this section, no explanation as to why there is a need for such a fund. Furthermore, it is unclear who will administer that fund. And again, the uses of that fund are also unclear, besides the very general description of rehabilitation and development. I presume that rehabilitation and development will come under the normal conduct of the provision of services of the Bangsamoro government. So let us include it in their general fund and let them use it for the rehabilitation and development purposes. I do not see the need to create another fund which will have another system of administration, another system of collection and of the disbursement, which again will just echo what the government is doing, the Bangsamoro government will presumably be doing anyway. Rehabilitation and development is an organic part of the duties and responsibilities of any government to its constituency. And so it is not, again, it is not special in that it is not being used for a special purpose. So again, there does not seem to be a need for it to be for a special development fund. And should there be additional funds needed, that can be provided by added collection, that can be provided within the block grant, that can be provided by a transfer payment from national government if it is agreed that that is the need. But again, to organize an entire fund with its attendant complexities and attendant administrative requirements seems to be unnecessary.
Mr. President, your first objection to it was that the purposes are too generic and too vague. You said rehabilitation and development are too general. So would you be amenable to something with a clear degree of specificity or specifics so that this fund can be, number one, we'll make it very, very specific. Number two, we'll put in measures for transparency and accountability. We'll state that it is clearly subject to the audit rules of the Commission on Audit, and maybe we can even have that the Bangsamoro shall submit a plan as to how to disburse it, not for our approval, but so that it can be tracked by the Commission on Audit, Mr. President.
That mechanism is, as I said, already in place. If there are other, in another part of the substitute bill, there is a mandate that we give to the Bangsamoro government to create a Bangsamoro investment plan. As a matter of fact, there already exists, but it was written by ADB. We will have to ask the Bangsamoro government to create one once it is formed. And again, it falls very much within the mainstream of the function of the Bangsamoro government. A special fund is required for a special purpose. Then if we can identify a special purpose, then perhaps so. But as it is written right now, it is rehabilitation and development. That is not special, simply because it is, again, it is part of the normal conduct of government business.
Mr. President, you did say perhaps so, if the purposes were more specific.
If the purposes not only specific, but require a special fund. If there is no requirement for a special fund, why create one? Added bureaucracy, added complication, added the potential for abuse, added potential for wastage, and if there are additional funds needed, I'm sure that Congress would be willing to increase the appropriation for the Bangsamoro government, and that perhaps it could be included, as I said, in the block grant and all the other funds that are being given. There are normalization funds that that we found in the budget for this year. There are normalization funds that are going to be included in the budget for this year, and those are essentially for the rehabilitation, normalization, rehabilitation of those conflict areas. So, again, rehabilitation. Again, the question for rehabilitation and for development, I think, clearly belongs to the function and responsibility of the Bangsamoro government. Now, again, we have not seen any special need for any special fund So again, that is why I removed it, because it is simply unnecessary.
Mr. President, it seems we will not come to an agreement with this issue, but let me just say, in closing, no, you said there is no need. Mr. President, I see a need and I see an opportunity. The need is that this is one of the poorest, if not the poorest, areas in the country. The poverty is stark, the illiteracy is high, the health conditions are below par. Clearly, there is a need. Secondly, there is an opportunity. Here we are creating a new entity, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, the Bangsamoro, a new entity. So this is an opportunity. We do not want it, like you said, to fail like ARM. Therefore, if you just give them political autonomy without giving them the financial wherewithal, then we are just dooming them to failure. Mr. President, their success in the Bangsamoro will be our success. Their success will be the success of this country.
Mr. President, we are not limiting in any way, shape, or form the funding that is going to be provided to the Bangsamoro region. We are merely saying we are simplifying the process and we're removing what we feel to be unnecessary. As it is, the different funds that are being provided to the Bangsamoro government are the annual block grant, the internal revenue allotment, the national government agent subsidy, a transition fund, an infrastructure fund, and as proposed in the BBL, 100% national internal revenue tax collection, and a normalization fund. Within those funds, I'm confident that any particular need that would be identified can be addressed. And so that's why the Special Development Fund, as defined and as created in the draft BBL, seems to have no particular purpose. And that is exactly the conclusion that we arrived at, and that is the reason that it was deleted.
Well, Mr. President, I do not see it your way, and at the appropriate time, I will make the necessary, I will propose the necessary amendments. Mr. President, I still have some questions, but the hour is late, and there are several of our colleagues that still want to give privileged speeches, so I would like to reserve my right to ask more questions at some time in the future.
The chair would prefer, if Senator Gingona and Senator Marcos would concur, that we continue and have a few more points.
Okay, then, Mr. President.
Yes, no objections from me, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Okay.
Nasa BBL.
On another matter, Mr. President, auditing.
Okay.
The provision on the creation of the Bangsamoro Commission on Audit was deleted, Mr. President. I can see why, but, Mr. President, may we know specifically your reasons why?
Now, Mr. President, this was to remedy an identified constitutional infirmity. The Commission on Audit is a constitutional body, and to create a separate audit body in the Bangsamoro that would not be under the supervision and control of the COA would be to diminish. It would be a diminution of its powers and its functions, and that is not allowed by the Constitution. Furthermore, to bring back the point that was made earlier, that ARM was a failed experiment, And again, I stress I do not agree with that view. But nevertheless, if we accept that for the reason that we are doing this, one of the main reasons that ARM did not, in fact, achieve what we had hoped it would achieve in terms of development in ARM, in Muslim Mindanao, was the lack of proper auditing. And the view that much of the funds that were being given to the ARM by the national government were not used for development purposes, were not used for operation of the government. But the reason that this was allowed to happen was because it was only an internal audit that was being conducted. And the COA did not have supervision and control of the internal audit, and that is why these abuses fell through the cracks. We all know that some of those funds were used to buy arms. Some of those funds were used to build large, luxurious houses, to buy expensive vehicles. All of these are certainly not the intended use of the funds that were given by the national government to ARM. So as to avoid that, then it is important that the auditing procedures are clearly understood and are strictly followed. And this can only be done by the COA. And as long as they operate and continue to follow the accepted practices in auditing procedures and in financial management, then the transparency and accountability question, I think, is well answered. But at the base of all of this, it really was because it is a constitutional infirmity. It is unconstitutional to create a separate commission on audit.
That point is well taken, Mr. President. The last point, that to create a separate commission on audit that would rival, so to speak, the commission on audit. But I would like to state that I think you made an incorrect statement, Mr. President. You said that the COA did not have audit powers over the ARM. It was just an internal audit entity that had audit powers. No, that's not true. The COA always had jurisdiction, responsibility, and audit powers over the ARM, Mr. President. All these times, since the creation of ARM until this very moment, the COA has functions, has the jurisdiction, power, and responsibility to audit ARM. Now, whether they did so is another thing. Whether they did so with due diligence is another matter. But as far as the powers and responsibilities and jurisdiction, COA always had them over the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao.
Well, Mr. President, we asked for the audit reports of ARM over the years, and we were told by COA that they only conducted internal audits within ARM. That is why the audit reports are very general and are highly aggregated, and we do not have any detail in them. I believe the procedure that was undertaken was that the internal audit would then report to the COA, and the COA would accept that report, and that would be the end of that. And so that is what happened in ARM, and that is why clearly the abuses that we have all seen that happened in ARM were allowed, and that is why we have tried to bring it back to the usual, in the normal procedure, where the COA is the one that has the command and that has the control and supervision. And what the Bangsamoro will have is a regional office of the COA. In fact, this extends more to this extends to all of the constitutional bodies, where we just align them to what is happening in other regions, but perhaps in an enhanced way, because this is not an ordinary region, it is an autonomous region.
Yes, Mr. President, but COA did exercise from time to time. I don't know how often, but did exercise. I do remember the Senate President, I think during, was it 2010 or 2011, where we discussed the COA audit report over the ARM. And so clearly, COA always had jurisdiction, powers, and responsibilities over the arm.
Well, be that as it may, Mr. President, the original conception of having a separate audit office for the Bangsamoro alone could not be accepted, and that is the base reason for that. But the additional reason for that is again accountability and transparency, which is the entire purpose of COA.
Okay, Mr. President, let's leave that at that for the moment. Yes, I do agree with you that we cannot have two audit bodies when the Constitution says there should be only one. One other point, Mr. President, the GOCCs and financial institutions, it said in the original bill, the Bangsamoro shall have the power to create GOCCs and financial institutions through the necessary modalities and in accordance with the law on GOCCs to be passed by Parliament.
Where is it?
These Bangsamoro government-created GOCCs shall be duly registered with the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, or established under legislative charter by the Bangsamoro Parliament, and shall be recognized even outside the Bangsamoro. Revenues derived from their operation shall pertain to the Bangsamoro. They were deleted, Mr. President. May I know why?
Oh, again, this was deemed to be unclear because it would seem that the Bangsamoro government can create GOCCs which will be recognized as government and operated, controlled by the national government. That cannot be. The GOCCs can only be created because in this definition.
You mean to say, Mr. President, that GOCCs can only be created by an act of by the National Congress and not by the proposed Bangsamoro Parliament?
Mr. President.
There is it is again a constitutional question. Article 12, Section 16 states the Congress shall not, except by general law, provide for the formation, organization, or regulation or private corporations. Government-owned or controlled corporations may be created or established by special charter in the interest of common good and subject to the test of economic viability. And so that is, I think, very clear that only the Congress is allowed to create such corporations.
But if I get the quotation of Senator Gingona correctly, these GOCCs created by the Parliament of the Bangsamoro must be registered with the SEC. Is that a correct recollection of the statement, Senator Gingona?
Yes. The phrase says, shall be duly registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission.
So that without the registration, it cannot come into existence.
Yes, Mr. President.
In that case, then there's nothing wrong with that.
There is an option, Mr. President, to complete the reading of that sentence. The GOCCs shall be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission or shall be established under legislative charter by the Bangsamoro government.
Okay, then, if that's the case...
That is the entirety of that,
yes,
of that,
Mr.
of
President.
that paragraph.
Okay, then, if that is the case, then if we make some changes, some amendments, would that be acceptable to the distinguished sponsor.
Again, so long as it's consistent with law and the Constitution, I do not see the problem.
Yes, my
As long as it is clear that the GOCCs are created by Congress and be they within the Bangsamoro region or otherwise. Once again, it is a power. It is a power granted to. It is the power given to Congress, and not to any other body. And
Just,
so
just to
we would like
clarify, with the
maintain-
permission of Senator Gingona, just to clarify on this point, there are two ways of creating the GOCC. One, by an act of the Bangsamoro Parliament, provided it is registered with the SEC, and number two, by an act of Congress alone, which is what is in the Constitution today. Is that correct, sir?
Not quite so, Mr. President. Let me read the entirety of the
Please.
paragraph. The establishment of government-owned and/or controlled corporation, GOCCs, and financial institutions. The Bangsamoro government shall legislate and implement the creation of its own GOCCs in the pursuit of the common good and subject to economic viability. The GOCCs shall be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission or shall be established under legislative charter by the Bangsamoro government. So, the Bangsamoro government is thus empowered in this in the original version to create its own GOCCs.
All right, just for the record. Yeah, okay. Senator Gingona, thank you for yielding your floor.
So we are your argument, Mr. President, is that the Bangsamoro Parliament cannot create GOCCs.
That's right, Mr. President. It is again in the Constitution. It says that it can be the Congress shall not create except by general charter private corporation. GOCCs may be created by special charter, and that is what the Constitution says.
The chair is a little confused. Can the Bangsamoro Parliament create a GOCC?
In the substitute bill, no, it cannot, Mr. President. In the draft BBL, it can.
But the way you have read the provision, which I assume is of the substitute bill, it would appear that the Bangsamoro Parliament can create a GOCC.
No, it is deleted. The whole section is deleted from the substitute bill about the creation of the GO. Everything that I have read came from the draft BBL, Mr. President.
So it is not in the substitute bill.
It is not in the substitute bill.
So that it is clear that only Congress can create by special law a GOCC or under the Corporation Code.
That is exactly precisely the point, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gingona.
Mr. President, then that is my proposal that we return this and allow the Bangsamoro government to create GOCCs. And if you want, we shall make it subject to registration. After they create them, we make them subject to registration with the Securities and Exchange Commission. If you want further, we shall say that whatever they pass, whatever they create, shall be consistent with the Constitution, pertinent laws, and Republic Act 10149, the GOCC Governance Act of 2011, Mr. President. But let us give them the power to create GOCCs.
They can create economic enterprises, but GOCCs, as it has been defined, are not GOCCs, Bangsamoro government-operated and controlled corporations, but they are government-owned and controlled corporations of the national government. So that is why there is that limitation to only the Congress or from the special charter to create such GOCCs. To allow the Bangsamoro government to create the GOCCs would be to impose upon the national government the creations of the Bangsamoro government above and beyond Congress and special charter. And that is the objectionable part to that proposal.
Special charter. Government, you're reading section 16 of Article 12, Mr. President. Am I correct? That is your basis. Section 16, Article 12.
That's right. That is the part of that is what I had read earlier, Mr. President.
So Congress shall not, except by general law, provide for the formation, organization, or regulation of private corporations. Okay, that's for private corporations. Government-owned or controlled corporations may be created or established by special charters in the interest of the common good and subject to the test of economic viability. This is with regards to government-owned or controlled corporations of the national government, Mr. President. But I don't think if a local government creates a corporation, then it is violating this provision. And more so if an autonomous region with a high degree of autonomy creates a GOCC, it would be violating this provision, Mr. President.
It cannot. No one but Congress can create a GOCC. Now, what a local government does is create what we refer to as an economic enterprise. It is a financial operation where the local government makes money. Tourism, for example, a resort, a restaurant, whatever it is, a mall, a development of a mall. That is an economic enterprise, and there is nothing that holds an LGU back. If they want to create an entity that exists solely for profit, that will redound to the benefit of the local government. It is not, however, a GOCC. That is the simple difference. The Bangsamoro government is as well perfectly within its rights to create such an economic enterprise. If they see an economic opportunity, put up a business, incorporate it, that they can define it as an economic enterprise. It is a well understood concept in local government, and it is not precluded from the powers of the Bangsamoro government.
Senator Marcos, under existing rules, a wholly owned government corporation registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission is considered a GOCC, so that they are subject to audit by COA, they are subject to the salary standardization principles. In other words, they are treated like a corporation created by special charter. That's the present rule. What will be the situation in the Bangsamoro?
In the Bangsamoro, that the GOCC will be created by a law that will be passed by the Bangsamoro Parliament. Can I see the original?
Yes.
No, the original.
We will recognize Senator Recto just after Senator Marcos finishes his answer.
The Bangsamoro government shall legislate and implement the creation of its own GOCCs in the pursuit of the common good, and therefore shall legislate and implement. It will be a law passed by the Bangsamoro Parliament, subject to economic viability. The GOCCs shall be registered with the SEC or shall be established under legislative charter by the Bangsamoro government. So basically what we are allowing the Bangsamoro government to do is to create the GOCC, which is, as far as I understand, falls within the purview of Congress. And again, there does not seem to be a necessity for them to create GOCCs, because if the idea is to have an economic activity, or to promote and to even invest in an economic activity for the profit of that local government unit, then that option is also available to the Bangsamoro government, and I do not see where the contradiction lies, Mr. President.
With the permission of Senator Marcos and Senator Gingona, the chair recognizes Senator Recto.
Yes, maybe just for a clarification, Mr. President, I think the confusion here is a technical definition of a GOCC as provided for in the Constitution, and under the Local Government Code, local governments are allowed to create local public enterprises, which are locally owned, government-owned and controlled corporations. And listening to the debate, I think that the distinguished gentleman from Ilocos already said that the regional government will be allowed to create local public enterprises.
Certainly, Mr. President, that is an option, as I said, available to all local government units, and I do not see why it should be why it would not be allowed to the Bangsamoro Autonomous
So the only
Government.
confusion again is what is a GOCC, what is a local public enterprise. They're very similar, Mr. President. So yes, local governments, and I think the Bangsamoro region should be allowed to create a local GOCC or a local public enterprise. For example, many public utilities are wanting in the Bangsamoro region. Water, for example, the Bangsamoro regional government may create a local water district owned by the Bangsamoro region, may create an electric public enterprise for their locality, may even put up a local public enterprise that can construct toll roads, as an example, and may even go into joint venture agreements with the private sector. So I think maybe that is only where the confusion is. But yes, I think I agree with the two gentlemen that we must provide the Bangsamoro region with the legal authority to create whatever we want to call it, a GOCC, a local GOCC, or a local public enterprise. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think, Mr. President, in the interest of good order, when it comes to the creation of corporations or any economic enterprise, let us veer away from the terminology of GOCC, as that's where the confusion seems to have arisen. And we can call what it is called in local government is an economic enterprise. We can find another term for it if we choose to, or we can use that. But again, besides, that is again well within the purview of the lawmaking powers of the Bangsamoro Parliament.
Okay, Mr. President, but the problem there, if you don't say corporation, then they can not be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think one safeguard we have is that Bangsamoro Parliament creates a GOCC or a public enterprise, but the GOCC has to be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission.
No, they can. There's again nothing that does not allow them to register with the SEC. They can form any kind of entity that they choose, non-profit, profit, charitable foundation, whatever it is they choose to do. And if they choose to register it with the SEC, they're clearly allowed to do that. There's nothing there. There's nothing anywhere that says that they cannot do that.
Okay, Mr. President, it seems that the bone of contention here is the word to use, whether or not to use the word GOCC. Mr. President, maybe we should suspend these interpellations until a further study, so we can look into the matter. My position is we should allow the Bangsamoro to create by Parliament to create GOCCs, public enterprises, whatever, and subject them, but at the same time subject them to registration with the proper registry authorities such as the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, and again, as in appreciation and to note the comments and explanations of Senator Recto, the confusion is because GOCC has a very well understood and well defined meaning. Government operated and controlled corporation. And what we are going after in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region is, as I said, commonly referred to as an economic enterprise in other local government units. Again, there is no constraint to the Bangsamoro government from creating such economic enterprises. They may legislate those the creation of those economic enterprises, but they cannot be considered as GOCCs because they have not been created in the fashion that GOCCs are mandated to be created. So I think we have actually arrived at the solution to this quandary. Thank you, Mr. President.
On the contrary, Mr. President, I would like to reserve to bring up this matter at some future time.
Yeah, you can bring it in on Monday again when we call this.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. So
Is that it?
Senator Gingona is suspending in the meantime his interpellation. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the bill on the Bangsamoro.
The consideration of Senate Bill 2894 under Committee Report number 200 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2923 under Committee Report 215 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2923 under Committee Report 215.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the measure.
Secretary will do so.
Senate Bill number 2923, an act declaring large-scale agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, prescribing penalties therefore and for other purposes.
I move that we recognize Senator Villar, the Chair of the Committee on Agriculture, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Villar is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, my fellow senators, I stand here today to sponsor substitute Senate Bill number 2923 in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 2082 filed by Senator Ejercito and 2765 filed by this representation under Committee Report number 215 or an act declaring large-scale agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, prescribing penalties therefore and for other purposes. This committee report was prepared and submitted jointly by the Committee on Ways and Means and Justice and Human Rights. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food, which I chair, has conducted comprehensive Senate inquiries and public hearings on smuggling of various agricultural products. Binusisi na namin ang smuggling ng bigas, bawang, sibuyas, meat and offal at iba pa. Sa aming pananaw kasi, ang smuggling ay numero unong pumapatay sa agriculture sector. Sumisira ng local agribusinesses, lalong nagpapahirap sa ating mga magsasaka at mga agri-workers at higit sa lahat, ito ay malaking threat sa food security ng ating bansa. I cannot overemphasize the importance of the growth and development of the agriculture sector to our country, an agricultural country. Thus, it is the policy of the state to protect and promote the productivity of the agriculture sector and farmers from unscrupulous traders and importers who by their illegal importation of agricultural products, especially rice, significantly affect the production, availability of supply, and stability of prices, and thereby threatens the food security of the state. About 600,000 metric tons of rice are smuggled each year, and about 200 billion lost to agricultural smuggling alone. Mas malaki pa nga ang halagang iyan sa total amount involved in the pork barrel scam, in fact. Actually, in some studies, ang agricultural smuggling ay amounts to 450 billion a year. At yung rice smuggling is 10 billion a year. Kung hindi natin hihigpitan ang penalty sa smuggling, mawawala ng saysay ang ating mga efforts para palaguin ang agrikultura sa ating bansa. Thus, smugglers of agricultural products are usually no less than economic saboteurs. As I cited on the bill I authored, some acts of smuggling are already punishable under the Tariff and Customs Code, but there are just some acts that are too ruthless by its very scope, making it tantamount to economic sabotage. Smugglers using manipulative schemes are sabotaging our economic well-being and are destroying the livelihood of our farmers. Hanggang ngayon po, ang mga magsasaka at mangingisda pa rin ang pinakamahirap na sektor sa ating bansa. Kung hindi natin susugpuin ang isa sa pangunahing hadlang sa kanilang pag-unlad, ang rampant smuggling ng kanilang mga ani or produkto, mahihirapan ang ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda na makaahon mula sa kahirapan. Under the bill, agricultural products subject to economic sabotage shall cover rice, sugar, corn, pork, poultry, garlic, onion, carrots, dried fish, and cruciferous vegetable in its raw state, of which have undergone the simple processes of preparation or preservation for the market. Under the bill, any person who shall import or bring into the Philippines agricultural products without the required import permit from the regulatory agencies or use of import permits of person, natural or juridical, other than those persons specifically named in the permit, or any person who shall import agricultural products by means of fraud or by illegally obtaining the required import permit shall be guilty of the crime of smuggling, including those acts which are within the purview of technical smuggling. The bill further provides that the acts of agricultural smuggling, including technical smugglings, are acts inimical to the national interest, economic growth, and development. Any person, natural or juridical, found guilty of engaging in agricultural smuggling or technical smuggling of a minimum aggregate amount of 1 million pesos worth of agricultural products subject to economic sabotage as defined, except rice, or has been found guilty of engaging in agricultural smuggling of rice or technical smuggling with a minimum aggregate amount of 10 million pesos as valued by the Bureau of Customs shall be guilty of economic sabotage. Nadisuri namin sa mga hearings na ginawa ng committee na iba-iba na talaga ang modus operandi ng mga smugglers. Smugglers have not only become more aggressive but creative and cunning in their schemes. Ginagawa nila ang lahat ng paraan para malusutan or to go around existing rules and regulations as well as policies and laws. Thus, we ensured that all the elements in the determination of the crime of agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, whether by means of technical or outright smuggling, are covered on the bill. We were also elaborate in liability of persons to the crime of agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, whether as principal or accomplices. It is very necessary for the state to protect our local agricultural industry and farmers from unscrupulous traders and importers who by sheer volume of their illegal importation significantly affect the production and stability of our agricultural products. Lalo na since this year ay ang implementation ng ASEAN economic integration at mas magiging intense ang competition. There is a need for a relevant legislation to stop agriculture product smuggling in the country, a law which will provide safeguards and indirectly increase income opportunities for local producers. We shall help reduce poverty among farmers and agricultural households in the country, and which shall ensure food security and stability. Higher sanctions for certain acts of agricultural smuggling tantamount to economic sabotage must be imposed, not a mere slap on the wrist. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I earnestly seek the swift passage of Committee Report Number 215 or the Anti-Agricultural Smuggling Act of 2015. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Villar, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2923 under Committee Report 215.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2922 under Committee Report 214 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider Senate Bill 2922 under Committee Report 214.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2922, an act creating the Philippine Trade Representative Office and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Aquino, the chairman of the Committee on Trade and Entrepreneurship, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Aquino is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. I have the privilege of addressing you today to sponsor Senate Bill number 2922 under Committee Report number 214, entitled An Act Creating the Philippine Trade Representative Office and Appropriating Funds Therefore, otherwise known as the Charter of the Philippine Trade Representative Office. Ladies and gentlemen, the Philippines has captured the attention of the global business community. Apart from having the second fastest growing economy in Asia, we have earned investment grade ratings from reputable ratings agencies. Just recently, the Center for Global Development in Washington, D.C. ranked the Philippines as the most resilient economy among 21 countries studied. Our island nation ranked number 1, above South Korea and China, second and third respectively. The country is also considered among the most entrepreneurial in the world in a report produced by Approved Index. There are even talks to build our own version of Silicon Valley to utilize the large pool of talented and skilled Filipinos in the field of information technology, design, programming, and engineering. This newfound popularity produced tangible and measurable results well beyond news headlines. In 2014, our country's net foreign direct investment reached a record-breaking $6.2 billion, a stark improvement from our 2010 net FDI of $1.07 billion. Mr. President, the Philippines is now considered a highly competitive player in the market of foreign direct investments thanks to our robust economy and the great potential of our workforce. But this is not the time to rest on our laurels. To maintain this competitiveness, we also need to improve trade negotiation and facilitation and ensure that we are abreast of the developments in the global markets. The Charter of the Philippine Trade Representative Office is a policy that kickstarts this initiative by creating the Philippine Trade Representative Office, or PTRO. The PTRO is tasked to consolidate and harmonize all existing functions from various government agencies, such as the Bureau of International Trade Relations under the DTI, attachés and permanent missions of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and United Nations International Organization, or UNIO, and the trade negotiating and policy-making functions of the Tariff and Related Matters Committee, TRMC. This is in order to drive trade negotiations forward and make dealing with the Philippines quick, easy, and highly effective. The PTRO shall form the Multisectoral Advisory Committee, or MSAC, that will compose members from both government and civil society, including representatives from the agricultural industry, labor sector, small business, service sectors, retailers, and consumer groups to strategically plan how to best support local importers and exporters. Mga kaibigan, oras na po para magtatag ng isang kinatawan ng Pilipinas na haharap sa pandaigdigang entablado. Huwag po nating palampasin ang pagkakataon na lalong iangat ang ating ekonomiya. Huwag po nating sayangin ang pagkakataong palagawin at pabutihin pa ang mga negosyong Pilipino. Mr. President, our country is now open for business. Let's pass the Charter of the Philippine Trade Representative Office and show the world that trade and commerce in the Philippines can be hassle-free, can be profitable, and of course, can be fun. Maraming salamat po. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Aquino.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2922 under Committee Report 214.
So suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2835 under Committee Report 177. This is the bill on anti-ambulance chasing, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that the sponsor delivered sponsorship last June 9. I move that we open the period of interpellations.
Period for interpellation is in order.
Mr. President, I'm also the sponsor, and there are no members of the Senate who have signified their intent to interpellate. I thus move that we close the period of interpellations, Mr. President.
Just 1 minute suspension with provision of the chamber. Sige na, Sani.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I reiterate my motion to close the period of interpellations.
Period for interpellation is terminated.
Mr. President, likewise, there are no committee amendments, nor are there members who have signified their intent to interpellate. I thus move that we close the period of amendments.
Can the chair would like just to review this matter a little bit more, and by Monday next week we can give we can
Certainly,
provide
Mr.
the
President.
sponsor if that fits the sponsors.
Certainly, Mr. President. I move that we at least close, Mr. President, if it's all right, may we close the period of committee amendments?
So closed.
Yeah, and on Monday we will tackle the period of individual amendments.
Yes.
Thus, I now move, Mr. President, that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2835 under Committee Report 177.
The consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, we just have one more measure. This is the bill of Senator Legarda, the resource centers for indigenous peoples, but she asked me to read the committee amendments, but they're now being photocopied, so in a few minutes they will be here. In the meantime, maybe we can do some administrative matters.
Please proceed.
Yeah, we assign the following senators: myself, Senator Ralph Recto, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Nancy Binay, as members of the Bicameral Conference Committee to reconcile the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2890 and House Bill 1039. This is the PWD bill, Mr. President.
On the what? What's
The PWD, Persons with Disabilities Bill.
All right. So constituted.
Move to suspend the session for 1 minute, Mr. President.
Session suspended for 1 minute.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2209 under Committee Report 147. This is the bill on resource centers for indigenous peoples, Mr. President.
In order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that the sponsor, Senator Legarda, delivered her sponsorship speech last May 26. I thus move that we open the period of interpellations.
Period for Is the sponsor here?
She was here, Mr. President, but she asked that I propound her committee amendments because she's not feeling well.
Yeah, but if the period of interpellation, who will respond?
Well, there are no members who wish to interpellate, Mr. President.
All right. So terminated period for interpellation in the absence of the sponsor.
I move that we close the period of move that we open the period of committee amendments, Mr. President.
Committee amendments is in order.
Mr. President, the committee proposes the following amendments to Senate Bill 2209. First, as an omnibus amendment to delete the phrase indigenous cultural communities.
This is on...
It's an omnibus.
Delete all the phrases indigenous cultural communities wherever it will appear.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Secondly, Mr. President, on page 2, line 14, to add the sentence, the Commission shall coordinate closely with the state universities and colleges, SUCs in the area.
Before the chair acts on the motion, the committee report indicates numerous committee amendments. What would the chamber do with the proposed committee amendments now that another set of committee amendments are being proposed?
Move to suspend the session for 1 minute, Mr. President.
Suspended for 1 minute. Ano ba ito? Pwede ba kumita? Meron na dito. Ha? Hindi ko napansin eh. So, and then, additional committee amendments. Huh? There are already committee amendments. Why do we do this?
not the same. It's not the same.
Kasi tinitinhan ko. Nasaan ba ito kako dito?
Sige, sige. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that we are discussing the committee amendments to Senate Bill 2209. It seems that we'd overlooked that the committee report still has committee amendments, and thus I withdraw the earlier motion of the body to which the body approved to approve. I move that we reconsider such approval.
So reconsidered.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration and maybe tackle the measure on Monday for where we are continue with the period of committee amendments.
Consideration of Senate Bill 2209 under Committee Report 147 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, there being no other business to take up, I move that we adjourn session to Monday, 3 o'clock of Monday, September 7, 2015.
Session is adjourned until 3 o'clock of Monday, September 7, 2015.